Hello and welcome to Telesur. I'm Carla Gonzalez and this is Interviews from Caracas. Today we are discussing the steps taken to prevent HIV and AIDS in Venezuela and in the region. Today we have Richard Hung, an activist for human rights and LGBTI. Thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you for this opportunity to talk about a pandemic which is involved everywhere, every human being here in this continent.
So tell us, what is the current situation of HIV and AIDS? And now it's not called the fight, but the actions to prevent it.
Well, as a matter of fact, we're talking, when we talk about HIV, we talk about a condition. And a condition that makes us different, but that difference can empower us. It's like having diabetes, like having asthma, like having a high blood pressure. Just a condition that you have to take care, but definitely you can take advantage of that difference. When we talk about AIDS, we talk definitely about a disease, and it's a further step of this issue at all. What is the situation about these two issues? Is that we have a Latin American situation about health, but further than health, is to be talking about discrimination, about stigma, because when we talk about AIDS and HIV, there's a lot of family who have merged into another project of life, who have been targeted or labeled by having something different. That's why.
So right now in Latin America, we've discussed some issues happening, for example, in Panama or in Trinidad and Tobago, of people being discriminated, being deported just for having HIV.
Just for having HIV, we're talking about immigrants of Venezuelan people. For instance, in Panama, when the women are arriving to Panama, they are illegal. And they're more vulnerable as an illegal or as a women. And definitely they get infected about HIV for normalizing their status, to trying to do some activities or whatever. And the point is that as far as the women are infected in Panama and get HIV positive, they are targeted, they are labeled for being immigrant, for being illegal, but for being HIV positive, and they are in jail and they are discriminated and criminalized. And that's a human rights violation, definitely, because Panama doesn't have a specific law to discriminate or to criminalize the HIV condition. That's why we have support from the non-governmental organization which I represent, and we have collaborated with a task force of human rights defenders in Panama to prevent a situation, because it's a gender violence for vulnerable women who are illegal, who are immigrants, and which are HIV positive. The other thing that gets a little bit harder is in Trinidad and Tobago, because there are a lot of kind of prosecution where people are HIV, and definitely when they are immigrants, the prosecution, the criminalization got higher.
Indeed.
In fact, they receive the people from Venezuela who has immigrated to Trinidad and Tobago, they receive medicine from a nurse, because they can even go to public hospitals, because as far as they are illegal, as far as they got to a public hospital, began the kind of a raid and prosecution, just for being illegal and just for being Venezuelan or just for being HIV positive.
So let's look at this problem, because it continues to be a health problem, a social problem around the world and in the region as well. Do you have any information, any statistics about which countries have the most cases, programs to prevent it?
Well, concerning in Latin America, the country we have the higher rate of HIV people is Brazil. Definitely because the level of the population and they decided to make their own antiretroviral treatment. They decided to have the patents of their own medicines, and this is the only country in the region who's promoting the new strategy, which is called PrEP. PrEP is antiretroviral treatment who is given to people as prevention medicine. Even though it doesn't matter if you have AIDS or if you are HIV positive or not, you get a treatment as a prevention. And it's the only country in the region who's providing this strategy. Basically because they make this kind of medicine. Concerning to other countries, there is important, there are national plans concerning about HIV, and these are Chile, these are Colombia, Mexico, Uruguay, and Argentina. They have a really consistent plans on HIV, how to treat, how to make an effective public policy to this kind of people. And they are really sharp and focused on key populations. When people immigrate, they recommend to go to this country because they have free medicines, they have good medical treatments, they have free examinations, and they have the right policies to this key population. Which are the key population? The key population are sexual workers, men who have sex with men, people who are transmitted, definitely which are more vulnerable than others, correct? These countries, definitely, they don't depend on donors, so the programs is very solid. What happened to the other countries in the region? They are more unstable because they depend on donors.
Yes.
And so you can have a sustainable program to hazard that kind of contingency. That's basically what is happening on the region about statistics about everything.
And it's also a matter of information. It seems that in some countries people are still not aware, for example, the difference between HIV positive and AIDS, how to prevent it, the risks of living their lives in a specific way with a specific partner, for example. How has that affected? Is it still a taboo?
This is a matter of taboo, definitely. And when we're talking about the HIV, we're talking about people who get involved or which are confirmed their HIV status. The people might get definitely discriminated, correct? They got anxiety, they got depression. They don't feel this is a new condition, you know. People don't get depressed for being asthmatic. People don't get depressed for being diabetic. People just get used to it. This is another part of my life. For getting involved, for instance. So I have to adapt and have to accept this new condition. But when we're talking about HIV, we're talking about unemployment. We're talking about people who get blackmailed, who are discriminated, who are labeled, because you have something in your blood that is make you different than another. We're talking about bullying, definitely. So when a kid is known as an HIV positive, it's the most bullied kid in a school. We're talking about violence, gender violence, because when a woman is HIV, it has a really higher increase of the gender violence of his partner. We're talking about domestic violence. Even though if you are a gay couple, you are the one who's infected and the one who are not. We're talking about violence among peers. For example, imagine that you are an elderly people, an old women or an old man, and you get HIV, you got discriminated from another elderly people just for being different. And when we're talking about this disease, it definitely has a social impact in discrimination, in labeling people, in isolation, about unemployment. The people fake the medical examination just to get a job or just to get a promotion. At your work, depending if you are HIV, you got no promotion at all. You have just to be isolated. So that's kind of effects, but that effect also affects your partner, also affect your mother, your father, even though they don't have any HIV at all, your kids, your son, because you are the father of the HIV one, you are the mother of the HIV girl, or you are the son of someone who has HIV. So we're talking about discrimination. For instance, in Venezuela, there are about 77,000 people who has HIV and who are receiving HIV treatment. But when we're talking about 70,000 people, 77,000 people, we're talking about by two. We're talking about because each one may have a lover or may have a partner who's infected, but they don't recognize or they don't receive treatment.
Or they still don't know.
Or they still don't know.
There's still a lot of myths around it.
That people also have a father, a mother, and a son. So we're talking perfectly about 500,000 of Venezuelan people who are targeted or who are vulnerable to discrimination just for being related to HIV issue.
And it's a different way to see it as a problem that engulfs many other problems, as you said, health problems, physical problems, mental problems as well. So what can be a solution for this problem? How can the state and social organizations, human rights activists, work together to prevent it? Because it's also a matter of prevention and education.
Well, definitely about prevention. When we're talking about prevention is to having condoms, to have the opportunity to have safer sex is the best way to prevent HIV. Another way to prevent is develop a national campaign about what it's like, about tumbling down those myths and those bunch of lies that people have in their mind because they don't have scientific truth about I cannot get HIV by sharing a glass of water, I cannot get HIV by sharing food or by kissing someone. So those are myths, but definitely those myths harms and discriminates people, you know? And you have to have a really outgoing but a really public campaign that involves everything. It not concerned about it's concerns about value, but not about religious, nor about moralism, correct? Because there are another type of family. We have equalitarian rights, looking for gay couples, transgender people, and this is not a matter of sexual. This is a matter of human being, just basically human being.
So what is the role of the state here? In legislation, in supporting organizations?
Well, in the state, here in Venezuela, we have a strong, but very, very strong legislation laws. As a matter of fact, we work together in the national law about equalitarian treatment, because there are laws about preventing HIV, about medical issues, about legal issues, but it has to be needed a national law about equal treatment, because the point is the discrimination, the point is the stigma. This law is about, it was stated and was made public and approved on December 2014. But we are still pending because this law has no reglement at all. So we have the law, but if we don't have the procedure how to apply that law, the people are just not taking very much care of the law.
Then so who has to have that pressure to get?
The pressure, definitely national ombudsman. So we're talking about Defensoría del Pueblo. We're expecting that reglement, correct? What else? We have, as a matter of fact, this is in Venezuela, there's a national law which is called El Plan de la Patria, and it has on a national objective to fabric and to national made latex gloves and condoms forever. And this Plan de la Patria was in 2013, and we are still pending on that issue because we don't have a national fabric about condoms. We don't have a national fabric. We depend about importing condoms at the price of whatever fabric or dealers can provide us to Venezuelan people, and this is another path. Because
that's an issue.
That's an issue for,
of course, very
for
important.
definitely because it's expensive just for being Venezuelan.
And
right?
also the issue of the economic war. There's cases of reports of medicine that was found expired, or smuggling of treatment for people with
treatment, definitely. Well, as a matter of fact, nowadays in 2017, 2018, there's a national crisis on HIV medicines because it's a multifactorial problem. But one definitely is the economic work, because the medicine that are sold to Venezuela are sold with a higher price, correct? The other, we had a Ministry of Health, which we didn't make any purchase at all since August 2017. So if you don't purchase any medicines at all, during a year and a half, during the 2017 and 2018, they were consuming the stock, the inventory, correct, about medicine. And it became to an end that it get definitely to the minimum or without it. And the other point is that whether you may want to buy that antiretroviral treatment in every laboratory elsewhere in the world, they have sold the fabric, they have sold the stock for the year. And even though if you may want, we have a new Ministry of Health in June, but even though if they want to buy new medicines to face the crisis, the laboratories has already sold the entire stock for 2018. So it's a multifactorial problem, definitely.
Have there been any investigations, any updates on these issues?
We have make the claim to the Ministerio Público, la Fiscalía, on 2015 about the smuggling.
That's a human rights abuse, a very strong one.
It's a very human rights abuse because the medicines are resold from the places to another countries, from Colombia, relabeled, retargeted, and just smuggled, correct? So, but we are still pending because that situation wasn't investigated at all. We have also reported the sending of condoms and pills for and known for fear for not get pregnant, correct? So, and these things hasn't been investigated. Well, what has to be done? The investigation has to be proceed, definitely, and has to be made.
And also the work of the organizations that are the ones that move more people. For example, you're involved in...
For example, I'm the director of a non-governmental organization which is called Alianza Landa, and even though we assist victims, we give specific speeches to LGBT people, to elderly people, to handicapped people, but we have developed a huge, massive campaign of education about the cinema, about the movies. So 10 years so far, we have done the international festival about HIV and AIDS. And it's the best way to to get to a higher audience, about to reflect by fictions and by documentaries what it's like to be HIV, what it's like to be a mother of an HIV people, what it's like to be a kid who's having HIV, what it's like to be bullied, or which are the treatments, or whatever topics that may get developed in the documentary. And we use it on the national system of films, which is called the National Cinematographer, Cinemateca Nacional, and it broadcasted also on television by communitarian television, and I hope in Telesur this will be the very first year. And it's the best way to get to the people by the eye, the prevention, not only by you are seeing something about something that maybe somebody has spoken to you, or you receive a leaflet, but in this case you are watching a reality. Mm-hmm. Whatever it happens in Africa, or whatever is happening in Asia, or in Egypt, or in Europe, definitely you may have that situation, that people in Europe, it can be found here in Caracas, or it can be found whatever in Latin America. That's a best way to get involved, to take conscious of it, and to see that this is another condition of life. It's not a death sentence. Mm-hmm. It used to be, but now I know.
And before we go, I don't want to lose my opportunity to ask you, what do you think are the challenges ahead?
There's challenges, definitely. There are still laws worldwide that have to be abolished. The people can get in jail just for having something different in your blood. There are a lot of religions belief that are satanizing, that are labeling people because they put a lot of guilty. They may feel the people, you are sick because you are a guilty, because you are a sinner, and definitely that religion have a really, really bad effect on people. And definitely there are a lot of myths, a lot of lies that have to be abolished, and the people have to be educated, from kids to elderly people. And the people have to have the minds that you have to change all your habits, or your lies, or your myths, and or your belief for something, just to treat good people who are different, but it's a matter of human being. Definitely that's the message.
That's the message, education to change
education
human
to change.
beings. Thank you very much for your time, Richard.
Okay, well, hope you see you in cinemas.
We will.
Bye.
We were talking to Richard Hung, an activist on human rights and LGBTI rights, on the issue of HIV and AIDS, how to protect the population that already has it, and how to prevent new people from having it. This is Interviews from Caracas. I'm Carla Gonzalez, and until next time.